Okay, so we have the top 20 albums of February in 2024. And before we get started, the reason that these are going to be delayed a little bit every month is because I'm working on the zine that comes out at the end of every month. As I write in here, we go over, there's the third issue, Uttering Nothingness, is released. It does cost a couple of bucks. This is more to support the site than anything else. You can go over on Patreon. You can hit the shop. You can buy the issue. It's a digital issue, and issue was a little bit shorter because I only got 2 interviews fully finished, and the rest of them are just waiting in the eaves, and I'm not getting responses from some of them. So I'll talk more about this scene otherwise, but I wanted to let people know that it exists. It's happening every month. You can subscribe to Patreon and get more information that way. Otherwise, just as active as last month, quite a lot of reviews. At one point in February, I was saying, I'm not sure there's enough for 20 items here. I don't think that February has, it kind of shot its shot early on. There were a lot of records pushed at the end of it. It was a short month, and it didn't have a lot of impact for me. That said, there are 15 pretty solid to great albums here that are worth talking about. So stick around for those. We'll get to all 20 here. The number one, now I kind of debated back and forth on what my favorite record was this month, going by the score, the time spent listening, all that. It was definitely Looms of Sinful Nature. This is a sort of a modern but also orthodox black metal influenced sound, a dissonant black metal album in some respects, an atmospheric black metal album overall, and one that in a sense is very much to that higher standard, a highest standard for black metal in the modern day. I think the production values are insane. I think the songwriting is, it blew my mind more than once, and I couldn't stop listening to this record from the moment it hit, and just wanted to keep talking about it. So I would have liked to hear a lot more enthusiasm for it from other people, but for me this was, it had to be the standout. Once I took in stock of what had happened in February, this was the best thing that was released. Number 2 is Stygian Crown's Funeral for a King. This is the sophomore full-length album from the band, and they've really hit a high point with this one. For me, this was probably the best doom metal album I've heard so far this year in February, and there's a lot of doom coming up in this year, but for me, they've improved on every aspect of that first record. They really took their time to write just flawless pieces. They put a lot of personality into this record. The vocalist improved quite a bit, and it just really owns the record and carries it in a strong way. The guitarists put a ton of work here. Everything really just hits on this record. I think they should be very proud of what they've done with it, because the first record was pretty good. I was excited about that back then, but this one is worth remembering. This is worth carrying around. This is worth. But this was one I had enthusiasm for. And it was cool to see that they were kind about answering questions about it too, and that helps too. That they were definitely check that album out and give it a fair shake. One spike's Ono Sprecklich and Colton's Haxon Sabaoth is probably one of the best death metal records of the month. Certainly the most riffs. It's got a little bit more of a flow to it. This is a little bit more of a melodic and movement-oriented sound from the band. They put aside a lot of their more dissonant and clangorous aggression on their past several records, and now they're moving in a different direction quite a bit that feels like it takes stock of the fluidity of something like the Chasm, but it still has that inherent immolation-esque brutality to it that they've always been known for. So I like seeing change in a band that is so known for a sound. I think it's cool that I couldn't have predicted what they did with this record, and I found myself listening to it much more frequently than their last few records. It wasn't sort of a review and done situation. I really wanted to sit with and enjoy this record, and definitely feel like it earned its keep here. At number 4, we have Sporagmos from Spectral Voice. This is a much anticipated sophomore full-length album from this Denver, Colorado-based band, and the quartet do really well to infuse the sort of dark ambient and atmosphere of their first record into the songs rather than as interludes between the songs. And so their style of funeral death doom metal becomes more spacious, more movement oriented, and it gives a chance for the vocals to really stand out and direct the experience in a way that is just it's not catchy, it's not all that, it's memorable as an experience, but moment to moment it's an eerie, surrealistic thing. It's going to stick around because you're going to be in the mood for it, right? If you're in the mood for this type of music, this will be a one that hits. So a lot of really strong support for this record overall, but I think it certainly deserves to be up there in the best of the year as well as the best of the month. Now, I was surprised to see the conversation around this band it petered out a little bit once it released, or this record released. Echoes of Light is the latest full-length album from Chapel of Disease, a German death metal band who evolved from death thrash metal into a little bit more of a progressive death metal sound, and one that now includes more of a heavy rock sound. And that's a big change to make. They sort of skipped a couple of steps in the way that Tribulation did early on as they moved to a major label. But here, Chapel of Disease find a very memorable and connective style. And I think I say there in the review and in my notes, this is the kind of band where I feel like they could open for the Ruins of Bevrast, but they could also open for Elder. So if that appeals to you, definitely check this out because I thought it's very much a connective type of music. It's an immersive and catchy thing. For all of the old school death metal, old school death thrash metal, and classic thrash fans out there, of course you know who Morbid Saint is, and Swallowed by Hell does well to carry on their legacy. It's a strange legacy, right? This was a band that recorded 2 demos, one in 1988 and one in 1992, and that became their discography. So they're known for this really raw and aggressive death thrash metal sound, and one that came from demo tapes. Swallowed by Hell is a professional recording, probably better than anything else they've done before in that respect. So we get some clarity, and we get this very aggressive sort of creator-esque feeling to this record that is vibrant, just again aggressive across the board. They scream their brains out throughout the whole thing, and overall I couldn't deny this was just a quality death thrash metal record, and maybe their own legacy gets in the way of that in some way because you expect something like Lock Up Your Children or something like that. But this is a different thing, but also something that makes a lot of sense in the classic death thrash metal canon, and the riffs match up. If you're a fan of their 1992 release, in hindsight, you'll understand where these riffs are coming from and their style. I think it builds on that pretty well, and it feels like they never left. Because it feels like they've infused 80s black metal and 80s death metal here in a way that it steps into 90s death metal territory like their last one did, but doesn't touch upon the technical aspect of it in such a direct way. So in the, like I think I referenced Atrocity's Hallucinations when I was talking about some of the riffs on the last album. This one, it's almost like they've stepped back to Celtic Frost or some, like Venom even for some of these songs. And it makes for, as someone who really loves 80s extreme metal, it makes for an exciting record, but it was completely unexpected. And it was hard to wrap my head around it, where definitely different aspects of the 80s finding their way into extreme metal and death metal and feeling like a 90s. It also feels like something a little bit new. There's kind of a rock feeling to it. There's, if you like Tribulation's The Formulas of Death, you'll probably like this band in general because they're looking back and forth in time and picking and choosing where they go with it in a pretty curious but effective way. I really like this record the more I listen to it. I think I like Mask a little bit more, but still solid and worth your time.
Going to the end. No politician lose the value of what.
Unveiling the Brekthal is the debut full-length album from Hesterian Vigil, an Irish black heavy metal band, and one that is all about the riffs. They're all about catchy pieces that are long form, really pull off the riffs, they pull off the intensity of it. They center around a sort of a cosmic horror lore, and so for me, everything kind of adds up on this record. It's above average, certainly above average for a debut. If you're a fan of the points where black metal and heavy metal meet up, and you like Malacarpatan or those types of bands, you'll appreciate what this band does in terms of creating tuneful and sort of epic experiences with their songs. There's a lot of depth here, and I think they've got the right, like, kind of the right mindset behind it. So check it out if that sounds like your kind of thing. Now, Life Promised Death is certainly a modern black metal record. It's very much influenced by post-black metal. There's a sort of like an Agalock feeling to some of what they do. There's a progressive touch to what they do. There's a harsh side to it. They reference kind of like grunge and psychedelic rock as some of their influences for this record. There's a lot that went into it that is just curious at a glance. The more I sat with this record, it's a catchy, memorable thing. It's a surreal black metal record. It's one that has a lot of sort of disaffected but passionate feeling behind it, depending on the song, and it has some really interesting dissociative moments where they're just at wit's end. So, as I kind of gave it more just above average scores when I reviewed it, but I've listened to it even more since then, and I would give it a little bit higher marks because I think this was a pretty substantial record. Orations is the latest EP from House of Atreus. This is a Minneapolis, Minnesota-based death metal band who are very heavily influenced by traditional heavy metal. This band has always been all about the riffs, but they've always been tuneful. So there's a lot to be excited about when a band like this shows up with a release. We don't get them all the time. It's been a while since their sophomore release, which was their strongest record to date. And so I was very excited about that. Celebratory Beheading is the second full-length album from Contaminated, an Australian death metal band, and one that has got some grindcore influence in what they do, more of a classic grindcore touch to a lot of their sound early on. They've also got a bit of like Death Doom and Incantation-esque feeling to a lot of their early releases. This record shows up, I think, almost 10 years past the last one, and just as heavy as they were before. Production values are much better this time around. They're better musicians in general, and so we get a better version of Contaminated on this record. You know, I don't like the album art very much, but that didn't stop me from enjoying the album because it's all about the riffs. It's all about the brutality behind it, and it's a pretty nuanced record. There's a lot of variety here that shows not only do they enjoy the variations of what they're doing, but they're able to put a lot of emergent moments and brutality behind it that is both surprising and just effective in conveying what extreme metal is. And so it's not a softballed record. It's a pretty hard hitting thing that I had a good time with. Savage Dawn is the fifth full-length album from Iron Curtain. This is a Spanish traditional heavy metal band, and one that will probably appeal to fans of bands like Tank and Motorhead. Obviously, it's more of a gruff speed metal influence, new wave of British heavy metal era sound. They've got a lot of speed metal record past. They've always been kind of in this realm. I think the big thing they do with Savage Dawn is just show up with more charisma and personality and songwriting. This record is just about catchier song.
Face to face. hungry we are. There's no place to run, no place to hide. Because we play fast, tigers beat.
Verses in Oath is the second full-length album from Holder. This is I think, a Washington State-based black metal band, and one that has evolved from something more of like a lo-fi whatever it was early on to a much more purposefully designed style of black metal that I would compare to bands like Ancient and Eternus in some respects early on, where there's a little bit of a folk and epic touch to what they do. There's a little bit more aggression to some of their riffs, and they keep it fairly simple and tuneful. Overall, this is still a quality release with a lot of solid songs on it. I think I might prefer some of their past material in hindsight. The first record is maybe more detailed and exuberant, but I like that this is a record worth talking about if you're interested in black metal. Now, I didn't see a lot of people talking about Petrification's Sever Sacred Light this year. This is a sophomore full-length album from this band. Believe this is a Portland, Oregon-based death metal band, and one that had a little bit more of an incantation-esque sound on their first record. And this one is a little bit more focused on a finished death metal sound with some punkish elements to it as well. So obviously the audiovisual style of this record is a little bit different. It's very colorful. There's a lot of personality there in terms of the imagery, and the production values kind of match that with something that is idiosyncratic but also high fidelity. And it makes for an album which sort of plays with the classic old school death metal thing in an era where not a lot of people are still doing that. The Path to the Abyss of Evil is the debut full-length album from Mortem Agman. This is a black metal band from Germany, and one that veers towards a melodic aspect in their rhythm guitar work. This is definitely an underground black metal release. It's one that just has a nice, strong voice. It's something that I enjoyed quite a bit as I returned to it, and just a solid black metal record. Not the biggest budget, not the best sound. Dismal Spells of the Dragon Realm Part 2, The Night Circus, is the latest album from Druidan Forest. This is a dark ambient / dungeon synth / ambient black metal project from the fellow from Vargrav, and this is more on the medieval dungeon synth style for him. These are shorter songs from Part 2. Part 2 was like an hour and a half. This is about a 45-minute record, and it focuses in on simple medieval feeling melodies. It's a high fantasy dungeon synth record, and I just had a great time with it. I got a ton of listening done with it, and really appreciate the style and simplicity of this product in general. Now, I was not expecting to like the Twilight Robes very much. I heard the first They Came from Visions record, and I thought it was all right. You know, it was pretty solid atmospheric black metal of a certain type, and there was sort of an oaken quality to it. But I didn't really think much of it at the time. When they came back with this second record unexpectedly to me, I found there was a certain catchiness to it. The leads were carried pretty well. The production values were a little bit unique in the way that they placed the guitar voicing and the sort of timbre of the way the vocals read. And for me, this is a perfect fit for Eisenwald. It's a very strong, catchy record, but it's got its own sort of underground black metal touch to it. Satanic Phenomenology is the latest album from Hail Conjurer. This is a Finnish black metal project which involves a lot of improvisation of short periods of time spent writing and recording albums. So what we get is kind of the primal essence of the songwriter and performer, sort of pushing through a bunch of song ideas that are, I think this time around, inspired by Hellenic black metal, as well as there's kind of a black doom metal touch to some of these songs as well. And there's, of course, use of harsh noise and other experimental things to really work with this record and take it somewhere. So it might seem off kilter and messy to some, but I think that's the appeal of the discography. You're getting something that is authentic and just straight from the artist in a form that is not as complete as it maybe it could be, but probably more pure to the moment of creation. And that's kind of interesting considering the quality has gotten pretty solid on these records from the band over time. Doomsday Goes Away is the second album we've gotten from Haystack since they reformed about 2018. This is their fourth record overall. This is a Swedish kind of noise rock slash post-hardcore band influenced by Unsane, which comes from a member of Entombed as well as two other folks. It's just a very personal record, a very strong noise rock trio sound, very classic, but kind of hi-fi, but minimal at the same time. Just a real good example of the range available to Haystack as well as noise rock past and present.
Christ thirst for the greater truth. Don't go out there, don't cut loose. Staying still as I possibly can.
Necrowretch's Swords of Dahal is a solid black death metal record. They've always been pretty solid in their Swedish influenced style. I would say that their influences went from necrophobic early on to now sounding a bit more like Watan. And that's a good thing. They're a little bit more thrashing. They're a little bit more aggressive here on this record. There are plenty of riffs and plenty of attitude, and there's a lot of energy into this record. I could have picked a bunch of other things, but really I sat down and listened to this record quite a lot of times just for the hell of it because it felt good, you know. So pleasure listening on my part. Not the most substantive record they've put out to date. Probably the first two or three were really where the riffs really came. So check that out if that's kind of your thing.